to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and welcome everyone. Can we please have the Commissioner roll call?
Commissioner Roof?
Present.
Commissioner Garvey?
Present.
Commissioner Bradley?
Present.
Commissioner Iacopone?
Present.
Chair Dugan?
Here. We will now open up the floor for general public comment. Public comment is limited to items not on tonight's agenda. The Commission may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed during public comment. However, our general policy is to refer such items to staff for further attention or to have a matter placed on a future agenda for public hearing. Do we have any public comment this evening? Hearing none, we'll move on to, yes. Does this pertain to something not on the agenda? That's correct. Okay, please approach.
Great. Filled out a form.
Sure.
So it has my name.
Are you Mr. Bradley? Yes. Okay, terrific.
Yeah, and for references, I have pictures here.
Okay.
The picture's worth 1,000 words. And I only have 2.5, 3 minutes. So
2.
I'll do my best.
Thank you.
So my name is Rick Bradley. I live at 301 Hillcrest Road. I've lived there in San Carlos since 1989. My spouse, Wendy Walter, and I have donated our time and money to many causes here in San Carlos, and Wendy has a Community Service Award from the Planning Department for a redesign of Hillcrest Park. There are 2 things I want to ask the Planning Department. One, to fairly apply the building code for ham radio antennas under 18.24.030 and be timely in response to complaints. The second thing I ask is the city to prioritize and clarify the residential and commercial installation rules for ham radio antennas so that planning can better enforce code and reduce neighbor complaints. With regard to my first request, on August 18th, 325 Sycamore erected a ham radio antenna that, in my opinion, is in default of the height restrictions and diminishes my view of the bay because of its hexagonal shape and height. When I discussed my concerns with my neighbor, they agreed there was a problem. They lowered the antenna slightly, but refused to simplify the mast design that they had prior to the hexagonal shape. On September 10th, I submitted the complaint to the inspector's office, and after several emails, the planning office said that Sycamore was in compliance with the height 30 feet above the roof line, and that the ham radio operators provide a valuable service to the community. In my response, I pointed out to them there was no on-site verification of the antenna height. The city had misapplied the commercial code language onto a residential complaint. There was no verification of the antenna degrading or diminishing our view. The comment of valuable service to the community had nothing to do with my complaint. My response triggered an escalation to the chief inspector's office and the city attorney, and the chief inspector said she could not commit to respond, but she would try. And after, it's now been 42 days from my first complaint submission, 29 days since I informed the city of the code misapplication, and I asked planning to enforce the current code fairly because the language of the antenna should not degrade or diminish a neighbor's view. My second request would be to clear up the residential commercial code with respect to height and aesthetics, which currently makes it very hard for planning to enforce because of the language is not clear. Between commercial and residential, I've surveyed 8 of my neighbors who all agree that an acceptable height of a ham radio antenna in a residential area should be a maximum of 10 feet above the roof line, and the shape of the antenna should be a mast only so as not to degrade or diminish the integrity of the community, the architectural integrity of the community. I'm happy to turn these comments over to you from my neighbors. In conclusion, I ask planning to assess and fairly evaluate my complaint in a timely fashion, and I ask planning to clean up the code and allow for community feedback. Pictures of the hexagonal antenna and my complaint are in the back of the document, and they show a picture of what a hexagonal antenna looks like. It's 15 feet across, and it looks like an upside-down spider web. It is very unattractive. It can be viewed from every window in the rear of my house, and I find it offensive or intrusive.
Okay. Well, I appreciate hearing your concern this evening. Just very briefly, are you, I'm not familiar with the ham radio antenna code. Are you saying that there's a code violation here, although it was stated that 30 feet was allowed?
I can't interpret the code for the Planning Commission. The inspectors, I think, would interpret the code. But as you read the code today, for residential, it is not clear that a ham radio antenna on the ground, how high it can go. So I'm presuming someone could push the limits, way above 30 or 40 feet.
Okay.
So that's number one. And number two, the aesthetics portion of it, I don't think has ever been brought up or concerned or enforced. And all I'm asking for is for people to make clear what the code is, and then give the community a chance to give feedback around the code. That's
Okay.
it. Okay.
Well, I appreciate your input, and we'll pass this to staff and take it under advisement. Thank you.
Thank you. And from there, will there be a response?
Staff will consider it, and you're welcome to follow up.
Okay. Staff will consider it, and I'm welcome
Yes,
to
there
follow
will
up.
be a staff response.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Sure. Any other public comment this evening for matters not on tonight's agenda? Okay, we will move to approve the minutes of our past two meetings. Our last meeting was a study session, which did not have public hearing, and that is why we did not approve the meeting of July 15th. So we will actually review and approve the minutes of July 15th, 2019, and the minutes of our meeting on October 7th,
Through the chair,
2019.
Staff has a correction to make. Unfortunately, there was a typo in the agenda listing. You did already approve the July 15th minutes. What's attached is your September 3rd minutes, but since they were not properly agendized, you cannot consider those this evening. So if any commissioners have comments in those meetings, I'd be happy to take those, and we'll bring them back at your next regular meeting. So you could just pass over A and then focus on B, which is the minutes of October 7th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any comments to the minutes of October 7th?
Yeah, just for October 7th, just one on packet page 13, item number 7. It was just an exchange, the question that I had, and the response from Ms. Mardisich is actually, and Josh Adams, is not really clear in the minutes. So if you can just read that second sentence, maybe it can get clarified. It's the very top of packet page 13 under item 7.
Commissioner Iacopone, do you have a proposed edit for that sentence?
I'm actually not sure what the response was, so I think I need staff to just share what the full sentence would be.
Okay. Is staff able to do that at this time, or should we continue this as well?
It relates to, we have a maximum 30% of the rear yard can be covered. And so the question was, I think, would that comply to the setback? And you could still comply with both ratios. You could still have a 4-foot setback and comply with that 30% coverage ratio.
Yeah, yes, I think just the way that the response from Josh Abrams was recorded here in the minutes, it says responded if can comply, and the phraseology just isn't clear.
Okay.
That's all. Simple thing.
Thank you.
Staff,
I
is
don't,
that
I
direction?
don't have a revision right now for the wording. I would need to come back. So if you want to approve it with the direction we correct the wording, or we can bring them back, it's up to you.
That's fine by me.
Which, approve it tonight?
Sorry, approve it tonight and ask for a correction to be made.
Okay. I'll move to approve the minutes of our October 7th, 2019 meeting as they will be edited, as per the last couple minutes of discussion.
I'll second that.
You waiting for me to do the roll call?
Sure, roll call, please.
Sorry about that. Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
Vice Chair Iacoponi?
Yes.
Chair Dugan?
Yes. So those minutes are approved. We will now enter the public hearing section of the meeting. We have a busy agenda this evening with 4 items. The procedure is first our planning staff, and actually the first item is a resolution certifying a mitigated negative declaration and monitoring and reporting program, and approve the design review for new water storage tanks at 2783 Melody Drive. The procedure is first our planning staff will review the project and give us the recommendation. Then we'll hear briefly from the applicant if they would like to present anything. Then we'll open up for public comment. Then we'll deliberate as a commission and make a decision. It's important to note, if you challenge an item on our agenda tonight in court, you may be limited to only those issues you or someone else raised tonight or brought to our attention in a writing previously delivered to the city. If you would like to speak this evening, please fill out a speaker's form found on the table in the back corner and hand it in to us. All speakers must come forward to the microphone for the benefit of everyone who may view the recording of tonight's proceeding. Staff, you can present the first item.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Kelly Beggs, Contract Associate Planner. The item before you are the approvals associated with the construction of a new water storage tank for the California Water Service Company. This item was continued from the April 15th, 2019 Planning Commission, so it may be familiar to some of you. This slide shows the actions that are before the Commission tonight, which include design review approval and adoption of an ISM&D. I'll briefly review the project description for those of you who were not at the previous Planning Commission meeting. The project is located on Melody Drive between Portofino and Torino Drives. The site currently includes an existing 250,000-gallon steel water tank, which you can see here on the aerial imagery, and associated equipment and site features. It also includes 2 cell towers, one that's 44 feet tall and another that's 12 feet tall. The proposed tank capacity is 350,000 gallons, and it would be located on the level paved area next to the existing tank, right here in the existing, and then located here in the site plan. This slide provides a bit of background and history on the project. The Commission directed the applicant to increase landscape screening of the proposed tank to improve the project's consistency with General Plan Policy LU 8.16, which requires utility facilities to be sensitively placed, shielded, and lessened from view to the greatest extent possible. In response, the applicant has revised the landscaping plan and increased both the quantity and the size of trees. They've prepared new visual simulations that reflect the revisions, and they've prepared an additional visual simulations that reflect what landscaping would look at full maturity, which is about 25 years. The previous depicted a maximum of 12 years. They've also upgraded the materials of the entry gate from chain link to wrought iron gate. And lastly, the city's environmental consultant also prepared an addendum to the ISM&D to analyze the changes to the landscaping plan. This slide shows the revised landscaping plan, and I've called out the areas of significant changes here. The blue signifies new trees, and the orange shows alterations to trees. As you can see, new cedar trees have been added towards the entry drive here. As there's a significant slope at this location in particular, the applicant is proposing a tree well to accommodate the new cedar tree. Then additional toyon trees are being planted to the rear of the proposed tank here. And then these 2 trees have been changed from coast live oak to toyon trees to allow the operation of the existing cell tower pole, which is located right here. There's also been some changes. There's a change from a toyon to a cedar tree here. And this table compares the previous landscaping to the current proposal. As you can see, there's an increase of 7 shrubs and an increase of 9 trees located here and here. And they've also note that all of the proposed cedars have been increased in size from 15-gallon to 24-inch box size. So at their starting point, they'll be larger than what was previously proposed. Next, I'm going to show the original visual simulations at 12-year landscape maturity, followed by the revised visual simulations at both 12 and 25 years maturity. This view is from Heather Park to the rear of the existing and proposed tanks, and this is the original visual simulation that reflects the original landscaping plan at 12 years. Then here you see the revision. You can see the additional toyon trees to the rear here, and then the larger cedar trees here. And then here's 25 years maturity. And as you can see, the proposed tank is entirely screened. The existing is mostly screened. It's not advancing. Oh, there we go. This is the original visual simulation from Melody Drive, and this is shown at 12 years maturity. The mouse is kind of, use this. And then here's the revised visual simulation. You can see the larger cedar trees are more effectively screening the tank, and you can also see a glimpse of that iron entry gate that I spoke about before. And then at year 25, further screening and just a sliver of the tank is visible. This is the original visual simulation. It's taken further west on Melody Drive, looking east towards the proposed tank. And this is also at 12 years maturity. Then here you see the revised landscaping at 12 years maturity, taller cedar trees helping out to screen the tank. And then at 25 years, just a sliver of the tank visible from the public right-of-way. I'll just summarize the environmental review process quickly. The city prepared an ISM&D and an addendum pursuant to CEQA. The project meets the CEQA's mandatory findings of significance as is summarized in the staff report. And the addendum did find that aesthetic impacts have been reduced by the revised landscaping plan, as you've seen in the previous slides. This slide shows the required findings for design review. The project meets the findings as analyzed in the staff report. And this slide summarizes the public outreach and comment. Staff has not received comments throughout the public outreach process, and I'll also note that there is no public review for a CEQA addendum. Lastly, this is the suggested motion should you choose to approve the project. I'm available for questions. The project applicant would also like to make a short statement, and the applicant's landscape architect and the city's environmental consultant are all here to answer questions. Thank you.
Terrific, thank you. Commissioners, any questions of staff before we hear from the applicant?
I had one question. Can you go back? One of the things you said was that there's a black wrought iron gate instead of the old gate. I think you went by it really fast. Oh, there it is. I just wanted to see it.
You can see it right here.
That looks very nice. Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Terrific. Would the applicant like to present?
So good evening, Commissioners. My name is Maurice Francis. I'm the project manager with California Water Service Company. Thank you for reviewing our project. So real briefly, I've gone through all of this, so I'll skip through some of the slides here and get to the slide. Can you scroll up a little bit more? 2 more slides up, please. Okay, right here. So this is an important project for the community to this service. As explained in the description, we have an existing storage tank that served the community that was built back in the late 60s. And over time, as the community grew and other requirements like fire flow, emergency storage needs became, we had the site. And here we are with the proposed plan to increase storage capacity at our storage site. And what is important also is this storage tank not only serves the immediate community there on Malandi Drive, but from this site, water is pumped across the canyon to another storage site that we have there. So it's important, and with the addition of this new storage tank to the current 250,000 gallon capacity, it will provide more reliability, more fire storage requirements, and emergency need for that. So obviously, we have an existing site. It makes the most sense from an economical standpoint to build our tank here. And currently, this is the proposed schedule that we have in mind. Between now and the end of the year, with the approval, we'll follow through with the necessary applications for a building permit. And in early spring, when the ground hardens, weather is more workable, we propose to start our construction works, and the duration of the project would last probably about 4.5 to 5 months. The proposed tank is going to be a bolted steel tank, meaning the panels are going to be fabricated from factory, and when they're brought to the site, we'll precast assemble them with tools, and hopefully the process will be a lot more faster. So, as I said, it's vital for safety, reliability, and emergency preparedness. And so here we are. I think Lisa covered it very well in her summary report, where we had the first meeting back in April, and right now we are before the commission and asking for approval so that we can move on with this project. And you've seen all of this. Thank you very much. And with me, I also have our Mike Oots, our local Bayshore district manager, with us. David Prasanna is California, my boss, California Water's design manager for Capital Delivery. And Stephanie O'Rourke, she's our consultant from Landscape Reflections. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you for being here this evening. Commissioners, any questions of the applicant?
I do have a question for the applicant. And will there be any provision to water these plants?
Yes. Part of our proposals with the landscaping plan, number one, we've made the trees hardy, which are natural to the terrain there, but we've also had plans for landscaping where they will do minimal watering in maintaining the trees, the existing trees, and there are also plans to cultivate some of the existing trees so that they will grow and provide better screening of the tanks with the proposed new tree additions.
Do you have any obligation, so let's say at the end of 18 months or 24 months, to go back and make sure that all of the trees you've just planted are still alive and replace them if they're not?
I'll respond to that. Actually, there is a mitigation measure related to the ISMND that requires the applicant to ensure that the landscaping survives.
Great, thank you.
And what is the mechanism that makes that happen within the city?
I'm going to defer to our environmental consultant to come up and talk about that.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. In the city, they're required to submit a report at, I think, 5 years in the future.
Oh, so like somewhere in the city, it's actually calendared. So if we don't hear anything, the city will actively follow up and verify the plantings are alive?
That would be part of the MMRP, and the adoption of the MMRP is that the city would determine how to enforce that and calendar it so that we would follow up on mitigation measures.
Whose desk is that? Is that like the building inspector? Is that?
That would be related to planning, so that would be the project planner, myself.
Okay. And does the planning department keep a master calendar like that out 5 years? I'm just wondering how that works.
So per project, the project planner would be responsible for calendaring items like this that are associated with project approvals. So that would go on my calendar, yes.
I see, but if you
that would be
within 5
so that
years,
would be part of my transition out. Is
see.
I would have to task that to someone else.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Okay, appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah, I'll just say we certainly do appreciate you investing in the infrastructure of San Carlos. So thank you, and appreciate you working with the process. The one question I had was, can we pull up the photo from from Heather Park, and we can even go to the 25-year. I just want to understand what because what's new here is, I guess, the Verizon or the cell phone carrier had a comment and asked for something different. And I was just wondering, is this the best view where we can see that? Or how can I understand what was requested there and what that meant?
This is probably the best view. I could go back a year perhaps, but the request came from, and I'll let Maurice answer as well. The request came from the smaller cell tower, which is 12 feet tall, and that's kind of adjacent to the existing tank, which is the tank on the left. So you probably can't see the cell tower here. But that's why the Coast Live Oaks were swapped out to the Toyons, because the Toyons have a lower height expectancy at full maturity, and the Coast Live Oaks could have interfered with operation of that cell tower.
Basically, the existing antenna at that location behind the existing tank, Commissioner, it receives signals from, I think, 2 or 3 other locations. So anything that obstructs that signal would cost the telecommunication system.
I see. So it's some kind of line of sight type system.
You're right.
Okay.
So we planted trees.
Where's it at in this photo? I'm not.
I could go to the site plan to show you.
Sure, that's fine. Yeah.
It is right here.
Okay.
So in that area, we planted trees, but we made sure that they didn't extend. The growth will not extend beyond the line of sight for the telecommunication tower there.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant? Okay. Yeah, this is a public hearing, so we can hear from the public now. I don't currently have a speaker card on this project. Would anyone like to speak on this matter? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All in favor of closing public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? So public hearing is closed on this. Commissioners, we can now discuss this amongst ourselves.
I believe that just looking at the new drawings about the trees, that the larger cedar trees do really, in my opinion, effectively shield and cover that tank. I think it looks good.
A little frustrated that the best shielding takes 25 years. That seems like a long time. But
That being said, I'll move that the Planning Commission adopt a mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program and approve the request for design review approval for Cal Water to install a new water storage tank at 2783 Melody Drive, San Carlos, based on the required findings and for the reasons as outlined in the planning staff report.
Yeah, I do appreciate what the applicant has done here. The finding's quite high. I mean, we were charged with determining whether the proposed infrastructure was screened to, I think, its maximum extent possible. It's kind of it's a surprisingly high finding, frankly. So that's what I think we were reacting to when we last met. And certainly appreciate the effort. I think especially, trees do take a long time to develop, and my specific concern was just the long term. Where would this end up over time? So I do appreciate the efforts and the additional trees. It seems like a lot of thought was put into it, and wasn't expecting the improved gate. So San Carlos appreciates that as well. So thank you for that.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Roof?
yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
Vice Chair Iacopone?
Yes.
Chair Dugan?
Yes. Terrific. So that's approved. Thank you for working with the process and appreciate it. Great. Oh. Yeah, that was helpful. It helped me too. Yeah. Terrific. We can move on to the next agenda item at 252 Club Drive. Staff, would you like to make a presentation?
Yes, please. Good evening, Commissioner. Stephanie Davis, Contract Senior Planner. Tonight, you have before you consideration of a zoning district boundary amendment, pre-zoning, as well as a general plan amendment at 252 Club Drive. Both requests are associated with ultimately a proposal to annex into the city of San Carlos. So there are two formal entitlements before you tonight. Again, an amendment to both your general plan as well as to the zoning district boundaries of the town, of the city, excuse me. Just a brief overview of the site itself. Site located at 252 Club Drive, indicated by the red star there on the map. There's one existing single-family home on a lot that's approximately 7,200 square feet. It is currently located in unincorporated San Mateo County. The unincorporated areas are shown in that light gray shaded parcels, while everything in that darker taupe color is within the city of San Carlos. The house is located in an established single-family neighborhood. The property does abut the formal city boundary lines on both of its sides as well as directly across the street. And it is also located within the city's designated sphere of influence, or SOI. For reference, an SOI is a formal outlined future boundary organization line for cities throughout the state of California.
And I'm sorry, just so I understand, so the taupe is San Carlos proper incorporated.
Correct.
And everything else is San Mateo County?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. A bit of background on the site itself. Back in March of this year, the city issued the parcel an outside sewer service agreement through our Public Works Department. What this did was allow the property to extend to the city's sewer system due to its own failing septic system on site, which was declared a threat to public health. There were a series of approval conditions that were associated with that outside sewer service agreement, including the points that the property could no longer be subdivided if it was indeed annexed within the city, as well as that a formal pre-zoning or annexation application be submitted to the city within 5 years of the date of its agreement back in March. Brief overview of the annexation process itself. The first step begins with the property having some conversations with its jurisdictional oversight, which is the County of San Mateo, as well as LAFCO, our local LAFCO for San Mateo County, which is the Local Agency Formation Commission. What LAFCO is the state mandated agency who is responsible for any change in jurisdictional boundary lines. The property owners have done that. Both the county and LAFCO have expressed their support of the annexation. So the second step is what's before you tonight, which is a request for a pre-zoning and general plan amendment by the city. If the Planning Commission at their conclusion of tonight's meeting does recommend approval to the City Council for the pre-zoning and the general plan amendment, the next step post any City Council decision would be for the Council to then review another application, which is the actual property tax exchange that occurs between a city and its county should that property be annexed. And then ultimately, and the annexation is formalized with another public hearing at the LAFCO agency once the city and the county have gone through all of their appropriate steps. So the first entitlement, again, is your request for a general plan amendment. The actual general plan land use designation that would be proposed for the parcel is single-family, low-density at 3 dwelling units per acre. That is a consistent land use designation with all of those taupe-colored parcels that we saw previously that are within the city. A general plan amendment does need to be found to be consistent with the city's adopted annexation policies within the general plan. There's about 8 of them. I won't go over them all, but as noted in the staff report, that this project is found to comply and be consistent with all of those policies. One of those policies is that a CEQA evaluation be prepared, which has been done. It's included as an attachment to your staff report. And the project, based on that evaluation, is found to be exempt per allowable exemptions within the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines. So the second associated entitlement request is, again, that of a zoning district boundary amendment. The actual zoning designation that is proposed is that of an RS3, single-family residential, low density, and as noted with the general plan land use designation, all of the adjacent city parcels have the same zoning designation. Zoning district boundary amendments are subject to 3 specific findings per the city's municipal code. And for the reasons as outlined in the staff report, the project is found to comply with those 3 findings. Additional to those 3 findings, there are further criteria within the municipal code related to pre-zoning and annexation requests. First, that a fiscal impact analysis be prepared. One has been prepared for this project. The conclusions of that analysis state that there would be no reoccurring costs to the city. There would be very small annual revenue anticipated. However, if that property was ever to sell, should the city annex it in the future in the open market, that property tax value would increase substantially and would result in a further revenue to the city if and when that time ever happened. As I previously described, their property is determined to be contiguous to a city boundary line. Also noted, as you saw with that map, the majority of all other single-family residences along Club Drive are within the city, with the exception of a few remainder parcels, pocket parcels that are still within the San Mateo County jurisdiction. And then lastly, based on the evaluations by our other city departments, it has been determined that street, sewer, and drainage connections are feasible for this parcel. In terms of required public outreach and public notice, the notice of tonight's hearing was mailed to all property owners within 300 feet of the site, posted in your local paper. One piece of correspondence has been received, and that was a letter of support from one of the neighbors who is located within the city, also on Club Drive. With that, there is a recommended formal motion. Should the Planning Commission make a determination to recommend council approval, I'm happy to answer any questions that the Commission may have, and I believe the property owners are here as well.
Terrific. That was a thorough report. Commissioners, any questions?
I have one question on relating to fire protection. I didn't hear it in your presentation, and I think I saw in the packet, although I can't find it right now, that the city's able to provide fire protection services without additional resources. Can you confirm that? Or
I can confirm that, yes. Okay. The application materials were routed to all city departments, including emergency services, and the determination what those services could be made. And additionally, there are some conditions within one of the resolutions that should the annexation move forward, they would be subject to any further review and or comments by fire, public works, and or the building department.
Thank you.
I have a question. Is the sewer connection done, or it's pending this annexation?
The sewer connection has already been done.
Okay, good. And then the follow-up is I don't know specifically that part of Club. Is there a sidewalk required as part of like the neighbors in the already incorporated San Carlos have sidewalk, and is that, well, let's start with that.
Yes, I believe there are some segmented pieces of sidewalk, and as I mentioned previously, should the commission make a recommendation of approval to the city council and ultimately this gets vetted, there would or could be additional requirements set forth by our public works department, and that could include improvements to the public right-of-way, which would become city. Yes.
So that will be part of city council's work?
It would be part of any application materials that are building department, fire department, or public works department could put on this parcel prior to the formal annexation by LAFCO.
Great. Thank you.
And we could approve it subject to a condition like that as well. Do you happen to have an overview, satellite view that shows the sidewalks on that side of the street?
No, the closest, unfortunately, thing I have is the Google imagery, and I don't know if we zoom in on it, if we'll lose legibility. Lisa, is that possible to zoom in on it or pull it up by Google imagery? Yeah.
Sure. This is my first annexation, so this is new ground for me. Do you have an overview of our sphere of influence? That's a new term for me.
That I know we can definitely pull up on the web. I don't have that information with me, but I do know, based on prior experiences in San Carlos, that their sphere of influence effectively runs along Club Drive, up Crestview, and then there's the Devonshire Canyon pocket. That's all within the city's established sphere of influence.
Okay, thank you. And so it seems like this, at least for tax purposes, is the city's gain, the county's loss. Does the county have a posture on this? Are they generally supportive? Are they neutral? I'm just wondering how that works.
I think the ultimate goal of established sphere of influences is for any remainder pockets that are in unincorporated lands to eventually be integrated into their assigned jurisdiction. So, for example, on the map here, all of the clear Google imagery that you see that's still located in San Mateo County, the intent of our sphere of influence, all of those are within the city's sphere of influence, is ultimate annexation into the city.
Okay, that's interesting. And this seems like quite a bit of public work just for one parcel. Is there, like, how big is this fee that we impose?
The application fee that was submitted?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Do you know?
And do they have to pay for the environmental reports and all that, or I guess, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. What do we know what the application fee is? I'm just curious.
I don't have the application in front of me, but it's in the range of $7,000, I would say.
Okay, so it is significant.
It's
yeah.
intended to fully recover the city's cost of reviewing it.
Yeah.
But as Ms. Davis said, the goal really is to get those unincorporated parcels annexed into a jurisdiction, and that's
Yeah.
LAFCO's goal, really.
Got it, yeah. Just curious that it ends up being so piecemeal. Almost like if four neighbors banded together to do it at once, would that save cost?
Yes.
I mean, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then there's also that tax sharing agreement that's typically negotiated by the county manager and the city manager to ensure that the county kind of remains whole and then the city benefits kind of in the future years.
I see.
And that's a little more critical when we're talking about commercial annexations and a single family house.
Yeah. Even though single-family house property tax can be significant too. But.
The maybe just to follow up on that, the time of any significant reappraisal is on change of ownership. It's for the foreseeable future, so long as the applicants continue to own the current home. There's the annexation doesn't trigger any change in appraisals. Is
No,
that
it does
the way
not.
we understood it? Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Would the applicant like to say anything? Okay. Yeah, not necessary. If you wanted to complain about how expensive it was, you can be on public record here.
And
Like to get annexed to the city and get this thing over.
Understood. So it's 7,000 from San Carlos. Was there similar fees with regard to the county as well? Do you
There was
happen to
a
know?
fee. I don't remember exactly how much it was.
Okay.
There's fees all over the place.
Yeah, I'm sympathetic to that.
So you initiated this, right? So you initiated this.
Yes, we did. We did.
You-
Yeah, because the
Collectively.
septic was failing, and the health department said that we had to do something, and we could not put a new septic in the property because it's too small. So we had to connect to the city.
So that sparked the action rather than
Have any other choice?
rather than just wanting to make sure you had fire protection and police services and storm drains and things like that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. This is a public hearing. If anyone would like to speak on this matter, I don't presently have any speaker cards. Would anyone have anything to say? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close public hearing.
I'll move that we close the public hearing.
A second.
All in favor of closing public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Public hearing is closed. Commissioners? I'm interested just understanding the sidewalks because it is a frustrating thing when you have a sidewalk that just stops at a property. I've got Google Maps pulled up here. As I recall, I don't think Club has sidewalks on that side. Okay. Yeah. Oh, you actually do kind of have a sidewalk there, yeah. Okay.
And the other side of the street, too.
Got it. And lo and behold, there's another water tank right there. So, yeah. Okay. Yeah, there's no, they actually have sidewalks, but none of their neighbors do. So that point is moot.
Yeah, the sidewalks sort of illustrate a general principle of when you're bringing things from county to city, whether they're circumventing or getting away without all the standards that would apply more generally. But in this case, it sure looks like the adjacent houses, everything is compatible, so we're not breaking a pattern. So I don't have any specific concern here.
Yeah, from my perspective, it was just exactly that point. Sidewalk and making it compatible with the neighborhood, in case there wasn't one. I think we've answered that. So from my perspective, seems pretty straightforward.
Terrific. We appreciate you working with the process, and I think we're about to welcome you into San Carlos. Would anyone, I would entertain a motion.
I move that the Planning Commission grant approval for the adoption of resolutions recommending City Council approval of a general plan map and zoning district boundary amendment to allow for the pre-zoning and annexation of one developed single-family parcel at 252 Club Drive, APN 049-050050, for the reasons incorporated in the staff report and with the conditions in the resolutions.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
Vice Chair Iacopone?
Yes.
Chair Dugan?
Yes, the matter is approved. Welcome to San Carlos. We're glad to have you.
Thank you very much.
Terrific. Next on our agenda is a project at 125 Wingate Avenue. Staff?
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Lisa Costa-Sanders, Principal Planner. I'll be giving this staff report. The item is consideration of a general plan and zoning map amendment to change the site from an open space land use designation to single-family residential. The subject site is a little over 1.2 acres in area and is accessed through the County of San Mateo via Winding Way and Wingate Avenue. The site is improved with a single-family residence that was constructed in 1997. The previous zoning map, dating back to 1990, designated the site as single-family residential, although the previous general plan land use map designated the site as open space. Upon receipt of an application in 1997 from the current property owner, the planning department conducted research and determined that the lot was legally created, as well as reviewed the zoning map and determined that it was single-family residential, and as such granted approval for a new residence. That residence was constructed on the site and a final certificate of occupancy was issued in 1998. When the 2009 general plan update was conducted, the old general plan map was relied on as being accurate, and that open space land use designation was carried forward. Subsequent, the 2011 zoning map, the goal was to get consistency with the newly adopted general plan map. And so unfortunately, that open space designation of the general plan was also carried forward with the new 2011 zoning map. It resulted in the site being designated as open space in both the general plan as well as the zoning map. So the request from the property owner is to amend the general plan and zoning map to designate the site as single-family residential from the current open space designation. The property owner does not have any proposed changes to the site at this time. So the general plan and zoning code open space designation really applies to undeveloped parklands, visually significant open space lands, water areas, as well as wildlife habitat. Single-family residences are not allowed in the open space zoning districts. The current single-family home is considered legally non-conforming. Staff has reached out to our Parks and Recreation Director, reviewed maps, and confirmed that the city does not have any plans to acquire this land for open space, and there's no trails planned across the property. As a legally non-conforming structure, the applicant could make minor repairs and modifications, but they could not expand the building and they could not replace it, as it would be inconsistent with the current designation. So staff does believe this property was incorrectly designated as open space in the general plan and zoning update and should be designated as single-family residential. Staff determined that it would be exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act for further analysis, as rezoning would not result in any significant impact to the environment. Any future development at the site would be subject to review under CEQA. City mailed the standard public notice requirements as well as published it, and we have not received any comments to date. And we have two motions before you. I split up the general plan recommendation to City Council in one resolution and the zoning recommendation as a separate resolution. So I would suggest you make two separate motions if you were choosing to approve the item tonight. And again, this is a recommendation to City Council. City Council will be the deciding body in the general plan amendment and zoning map amendment. And I'd be happy to try to answer any of your questions, and I believe the property owner is also here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Did this situation trigger a review of the records for properties abutting open space for other properties that might have had a similar kind of thing happen?
We did not review other properties, but I didn't see any. If you look at the map, this is a smaller residential property when you compare it to others that are zoned and general plan designated open space are quite larger. So I didn't see any other small properties that fall into that category.
Okay, thanks. It just seemed like, well, you've put the case forward that it was sort of, I'll say, an error of omission over time, and the request is to get things back to where they should be or were intended. And yeah, okay, thank you.
I have a question. The 1990 zoning map designated it as single-family residential, but before that, it was open space. So was that a decision to convert open space to residential conscious, or was that? I'm just curious.
I'm sorry, I didn't research older zoning maps. I researched the zoning map that was in effect at the time of the application. So I do not have information on a previous zoning maps.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it seems like it's been a long time that the house has been there, and
yes.
But I'm just curious how it got converted and whether.
How old is the home?
A permit was issued in 1997, and it was finalized in 1998.
So something happened when we updated the general plan in 2009
Correct.
that was an error or oversight,
Right,
perhaps.
and when the permit was issued for the resident, staff relied on the zoning map as the controlling document and did not rely on the general plan at that time. We really did the checking on the zoning map in order to issue the permit for the home, and that inconsistency wasn't realized at that time.
I see. So 1.25 acres seems like a pretty good sized lot. How does that relate to most RS6 lots? And yeah.
So this is in somewhat of a hillside area, so there are some larger properties in that area. But yes, this lot is larger than the neighboring properties.
Yeah. Okay. And I just and RS6 is definitely that's all the neighbors. That is clearly an RS6 zone.
That's correct. That's what surrounds the site.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Does the applicant want to say anything before us?
Ron Sturika, 125 Wingate Avenue. First of all, I think Lisa did an excellent job explaining the situation. When we purchased the property, it was designated R1, went through a very good review of the property with the city, no questions at all. And it wasn't until probably 4 or 5 months ago that I noticed on the map that it was zoned open space, which is a complete shock to me. But as open space, as Lisa said, it definitely devalues the property, whatever we would want to do with it. And so all I'm requesting is that the property be reestablished as a residentially zoned property as it was when I purchased the property and built the house. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it certainly seems like something was amiss and it wasn't your fault. So appreciate you working with the process. All right, this is a public hearing. I have one speaker card. If you would like to come forward, Mr. Barman.
All right. I'm Michael Berman. I live at 7 Portofino Court. I am the Sturika's neighbor to the northeast, and consistent with the topic of the evening, we have our own water tank. Isn't that right?
I'm looking at it right now, actually.
I would like to commend the city of San Carlos, are you happy, for acknowledging an error, willingness to fix it. How refreshing in today's climate of denial. I also want to commend the Sturicas for being good neighbors for 20 years, particularly to Ron. He and I are the only ones who cut the long grass ourselves. 2019 is my 40th year of doing this. If we are lucky, other neighbors hire someone to cut the long grass. If we are unlucky, we just have a fire risk. So why am I here tonight? Why am I at the microphone? Because of a phrase I see in the agenda. There are no plans for trails across their property. The city has lots of plans for trails, but that's all they are, plans. 30 years ago, I could walk from my house through Devonshire Canyon and southwest onto Melody Drive. Now I can't. 30 years ago, I could walk west to Crestview. Now I can't. 30 years ago, I could walk northwest to Club. Now I can't. 30 years ago, when the development of the lands of Rosa Flora was being considered for Hyde Park Estates, the quid pro quo, to use another phrase that's receiving a lot of currency these days, was that the remainder of the land would be kept as open space. And so it has remained. It's really nice to look at, but it's completely useless because it is inaccessible. Anybody who's familiar with the center of Winding Way will know that it's a paper street. We've seen several of them on the north side of Club Drive on the maps that you've been showing this evening. It's turning into a real street. The city plans show trails up to the park on Crestview and have done, in my experience, for decades. But that's all they are, paper trails. If these trails ever get built after decades of inaction, then I will either be too old to take advantage of them or I will have died. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, are you for or against it coming from open space? Okay. Very good. Would anyone else like to speak on this matter? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close public hearing.
I'll move we close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Public hearing is closed. Commissioners?
I'll move that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution recommending the City Council approve of a general plan map amendment to designate 125 Wingate Avenue, APN 050-321-280 as a single-family zone based on the required findings.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes?
Vice Chair Iacoponi?
Yes.
Chair Dugan?
Yes. So congratulations, and glad we can help you get this cleaned up. So thank you.
One more motion, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I further move, I'll make the second motion. I further move that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution recommending City Council approval of a zoning map amendment to designate 125 Wingate Avenue, APN 050-321-280 as single-family RS6, based on the required findings.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes?
Vice Chair Iacoponi?
Yes.
Chair Dugan?
Yes. There, we're approved. Thank you for helping us clean that up. Appreciate it. All right, we'll move on to our final agenda item this evening at 1240 El Camino Real. Staff?
Good evening again. Stephanie Davis, Contract Senior Planner. So tonight you have 4 entitlement requests before you for a parcel at 1240 El Camino Real. You have design review, tentative map to create condominium units, below market rate housing plan, and a waiver for a deviation from a development standard. Overview of the proposed project itself. The project is requesting to demolish a 1-story commercial building, construct a new 4-story mixed-use building at 1240 El Camino Real. The proposal includes 1,450 square feet of ground floor commercial. Also on the ground floor at the rear of the building is a covered parking garage. There are 8 residential units proposed at the 2nd through 4th floors. They are a mix of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units. One of the 1-bedroom units is proposed as a below market rate or BMR inclusionary housing unit, affordable to a moderate income household. All of the residential units will be accessed through an internal lobby design available both at the front and the rear of the building, while the commercial space will be accessed through glass doors that face out onto El Camino Real. For the 8 residential units, open space is proposed in a mix of both private unit balconies, a shared 2nd floor courtyard, a shared rooftop patio area, as well as some shared rear yard green space. So again, the 4 requested entitlements before you tonight, I'll be going into a discussion on each of these 4, starting with design review. Just an overview of what this slide is showing. Up at the top left corner is the proposed front or El Camino Real eastern elevation. Underneath that rendering is the proposed color and materials that the entire building, and we'll get into the details of that. And we also have a hard copy of those up here. The architect will be going through in further detail, and I will be summarizing as we jump into more discussion. And then lastly on this slide, you have in a black and white rendering, the rear or western elevation that would front the alleyway looking out towards Laurel Street. So the overall building's architectural style is best described as contemporary contextual. It does introduce a new 4-story building that is comprised of high-end materials, complementary neutral color tones. The primary exterior materials themselves, there are textured mineral composite and tile cladding, as I mentioned, of varying neutral tones. The front of the building proposes a significant use of glass in the attempts at providing transparency through floor-to-ceiling windows at the ground floor residential unit, glass doors and windows at the residential units at the 2nd through 4th floors, as well as glass panels at those balcony areas. Also at the front and rear of the building, the use of aluminum awnings, sunshades, trellises, and all of the window and door framings are proposed. Moving to the rear elevation, you'll have that same color material and sampling that I just described carried throughout to the rear. There is continual use of aluminum, an aluminum perforated glass garage door. To the right of that garage door is an aluminum trellis that would be landscaped with with vines and other plantings to help screen some mechanical equipment that's located behind it. Moving along to the 2 side elevations, starting with the left or southern elevation. This elevation recesses the middle of the building at the 2nd through 4th floors, approximately 14 feet inwards towards the building to create a 2nd floor courtyard. That's that shared common space that I was mentioning before. Additionally, you can see those green shaded areas on the building. Those are insets of an additional 2 feet to help break up the wall lines along this southern elevation. At the right or northern side of the building, there continues to be segmented approach to help break up that lineal wall mass. All those areas in green, those are inset 3 feet from the wall adjacent to it. That allows for windows to be proposed at the 2nd through 4th floor residential units. And in terms of colors and materials, again, you're carrying over those same materials and colors that I described previously. In terms of the parking that's proposed for this building, again, all is to be located on site. Access from the rear yard, public alleyway, to a covered parking garage. The project itself requires a total of 11 parking spaces, while 12 are proposed. Of those 12 spaces, 10 are proposed as 2-tiered stacked parking lifts. As required by the municipal code, a site analysis of the proposed parking lifts was prepared by an outside professional traffic engineering firm to evaluate those proposed parking systems' design dimensions, vertical clearances, maneuverability of different types of vehicles, as well as the system operation of this program itself.
And was that professional hired by the city or by the applicant?
That was hired and paid for by the applicant.
Okay.
And this analysis did conclude that the proposed stacked parking system did meet the city's adopted development and design standards in its municipal code related to stacked parking systems, which are allowed. The last component of design review associated with the building is the landscaping. So landscaping is proposed primarily at the ground floor at both the front and the rear of the building. In the front, along the commercial space, it does include 2 new street trees as well as additional variety of shrubs to be planted within planter boxes. Those renderings that you, or I should say photographs, are examples of the type of planter boxes that would be proposed. At the rear of the building, a few trees, other shrubbery, and some grass area is proposed adjacent to the driveway abutting the public alleyway. There's also landscaping proposed at that inset second floor courtyard along the southern elevation in the form of planter boxes. And then at the 4th floor's rooftop shared patio space, the entire perimeter of that rooftop area does have landscaping proposed within planter boxes as well.
So the whole white space we're seeing there, that's all rooftop deck?
That white space is just the perimeter of the building itself. So this plan that you see here is just the landscaping for the 1st floor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's just the footprint of the building. There is within the attachments, the staff report attachments, a landscaping plan specific to the 4th floor courtyard. I can direct you to that page if you'd like.
Should be good to understand that.
Get there. See, my copy is not having the master numbering system. Let me pull it up on the packet. It's L2 sheet. Do you have a numbering on that?
I don't see packet pages here. Oh, it's behind my staple.
Oh.
Yeah.
Maybe if you can see sheet L2.
I see. So it's just the center part of the building, and it opens facing which direction?
Access to the rooftop patio faces the northern side of the building.
Okay. So if you're on that deck, you can look out north, but otherwise you're looking at walls on the other 3 sides? Is that, am I reading that right?
No, you could look out on all 4 sides of that rooftop patio,
Okay.
but access is on this side here.
Okay.
And the rooftop patio is that square box that you just described.
Yeah.
The rear of that is still roof that would accommodate future mechanical equipment and or solar panels.
I see.
Yeah, you would have a view out El Camino. You may be able to see the bay. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. I was,
Get it on the right page there.
perfect.
But I can't see, I can't read that.
Oh, yeah. I can't read that either, but, okay. Oh, yeah, that's a good view. Thank you, David. Okay, I got it. Yeah. Appreciate it.
I guess my question is that set back enough to alleviate the potential privacy concerns for adjacent properties, even though right now it doesn't look like there would be any issue. But how many feet set back is the
rooftop patio?
Yeah.
Let me open up the plans.
Hard to get a feeling for, I mean, you don't want people hanging over the neighboring property, but this looks pretty.
I guess it's hanging, if it's hanging over anything, it's mostly El Camino, I think. Or the sides too, I guess. Yeah, you're right.
It looks like the
It's-
inset on the side is,
Oh, sorry. It's 3 feet in from the northern elevation, and it is approximately 12 feet in from the southern side or the left side of the building. In terms of the El Camino Real elevation, it is set back approximately, well, from the property line, it's set back about 12 feet, but from the building itself, about 4 feet. And from the rear of the building, the one that faces Laurel Street, you're looking at 50, about over 65 feet. Okay. Is there any further questions on the landscaping before I move on?
No questions there.
So moving into the second requested entitlement, which is a tentative map to allow for a subdivision to create condominium units. Specifically, the request would be to create 8 condominium units and 1 commercial condominium unit. A tentative map, according to the municipal code, is required to meet 10 required findings. And as detailed in the staff report, the project is found to comply with those 10 required findings. The third entitlement is the request for approval of a below market rate housing plan. Should the commission approve the project, BMR housing agreement between the city and the property would be required. The ordinance does require 15% of ownership units to be set aside at affordable household income limits. The applicant's below market rate housing plan proposes to provide one bedroom unit affordable to a moderate income household, as well as pay an established in lieu housing fee. This plan has been reviewed and conditionally approved by the city's below market rate housing manager.
And when we say 15%, is that on a square footage basis? Do you have that measurement?
15% of the total amount of units proposed.
Okay, and do you have that ratio on this 1-bedroom unit versus the total occupiable square footage?
Square footage wise?
Yes.
Of the 1 bedroom?
Yes, the
Yes.
1-bedroom versus, not counting the garage, the occupiable square feet.
Related to the whole building, I'd have to run a quick calculation. I can tell you what the square footage of the 1-bedroom unit is.
Sure.
If that helps. I'm sorry? 834 square feet.
And what's the total square footage?
Oh. Here, let me look at the plans.
Okay.
$16,390 square feet is the total square footage proposed for the building. That includes the commercial and the garage.
Understood, yeah. I'm just curious, do we, and I know this isn't the exact review, but I do find this calculation interesting. Do we know what the total of the apartment square footage is? I think I can add it up. It's right here. Okay. Yeah, I think we just added up at 10,200 actually, which is more.
I think some of that total, if you were to total the second, third, and fourth floor square footages provided in the plans, that would also include the ancillary hallway and entry areas to the units.
I see. Okay.
I mean, I guess we can note that the below market rate housing fraction is somewhat less than the 15%, but they make up for the difference with the in lieu fee.
So it's Ye-
works?
Sure. So the 15% is calculated on the 8 units. So at 8 units, it's 1 point some small remainder. That small remainder has an established formula to pay that supplemental fee, which in this case was calculated to be, I think, slightly less than $72,000. And that $72,000 gets deposited into the city's below market rate housing fund to be put into affordable housing projects sometime in the future elsewhere in the city.
Yeah.
Since that ratio did not round up to an additional full unit.
Correct. Because that's what we recently passed, that they can't only do in lieu fees. Isn't that something we just recently passed that, I believe? But this is for the fractional.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And it also applies to rental as well as ownership.
Okay. That's right. Because, yeah, my rough math has it at less than 10%, the small unit versus these other large units. So it is kind of curious that we don't do it on a square footage basis and by a unit basis. You know, that would be something to consider in the future, actually.
So of the 8 units, what's the breakdown of 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom? Three 1 bedrooms?
Three 3 bedrooms, 3 2 bedrooms, and 2 1 bedrooms.
And how does that work? How do they get to choose between low income, moderate income? I think there's 3 levels of that.
That's discussion and negotiation between the project applicant and the city's housing manager.
I see. And
So it's also the housing manager is also looking at what the need is, I think, currently at the time with the city, and what units have been already created and are prepared recently. Lisa?
Yeah, I think the code actually establishes the first unit as a moderate and then the second unit as low or very low.
I see. Okay. And this, I think we've bumped into this before. This becomes a 50-year deed. Is that right?
I think that's a standard that they're utilizing.
I need to check with the housing manager. It's either 50 years or for the life of the project.
Yeah, I think it's just 50 years, which I've always thought was curious as well. Okay.
I'll move on to the last requested entitlement, which is that of a waiver. And so the waiver provisions within the municipal code do allow for a request of relief from a development standard up to 10% of whatever that standard is. In this case, the requested waiver is for a reduced driveway width. The driveway, again, that would be access off of the rear yard public alleyway to serve the parking garage, whereas 20 feet is the standard required. The applicant is proposing a 16-foot wide driveway. In order to assess that request, staff did require that same traffic engineering firm to perform an evaluation, whether that reduced width would be able to be found to comply with the city's required findings in order to grant such a waiver. The traffic engineering firm did conclude that due to the project's low traffic volume, given only 8 units at the proposed bedroom breakdown that we previously mentioned, that no vehicle queuing would be expected, given the nature of the development. They also were able to demonstrate that a 16-foot wide driveway would still allow for 2 sport utility vehicles to safely pass each other, both coming and leaving the site. And with some revisions to the proposed location of the trash and recycling receptacles, which are now located at the very southern end of the rear yard, they were able to conclude that the driveway would operate safely under industry standards.
Just to check the math on that, can you link the point about the waiver allows relief up to 10%, and we're actually proposing a 20% reduction? In other words, 4 foot off of 20 is 20% reduced. And I don't know yeah, I'm just trying to connect the first bullet point and the second bullet point.
Right, I'm sorry, I believe that is incorrect at the 10% reference.
That's okay.
In terms of public outreach, the project applicant did initially conduct outreach when the project was initially submitted to the city, which was back in July of 2018. Just for historical perspective, there was a series of renditions and revisions to help address some building design concerns from the original submittal. There's been more segmentation and articulation that have been added into the building. That public outreach that the applicant submitted was to all property owners and residents within 300 feet of the site. And they were unable to get one meeting where everybody could attend. So instead, what the project property owner did was to meet with each of the interested parties who responded to their inquiry individually. And the conclusions that have been submitted to the city was all of those responses were positive in terms of the design and the proposal of the building itself. The city did propose standard public noticing to mailings of tonight's meeting and published in the newspaper, and to date, no comments have been received. Should the commission choose to approve the project, a recommended formal motion has been presented here up on the screen. The property owners and the project architect are here. I believe the project architect would like to say a few words as well, but I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Any questions of staff, commissioners?
I had one question about the lift for the cars. Are there any other developments in San Carlos that use a similar kind of a lift?
I think there has. Lisa, do you know any off the top of your head? Parking lifts?
We have a few projects in San Carlos that have recently been approved with parking lifts. I don't know the exact design of this one, but 817 Walnut was approved, and there's at least 3 others, and I'm sorry, I don't have those addresses.
Yeah, and as a commission, we've expressed general concern over these parking lifts and how they'll actually work. And I think we even asked staff to allow us to see them in action or somehow facilitate some kind of field trip for us, because we all feel rather ignorant on this subject. And every time we encounter these, it raises concerns. You know, how long will they run? What if they don't keep running? You know, there's 8 units being approved, and I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I see 6 spaces, and 5 of them have lifts. So does that mean units, like my neighbor, like whoever gets there, like I can almost see it working if it's like each, you know, each condo gets one space, which is, you know, gets one slot with a lift, so that's 2 spaces. But how does this work with neighbors? I mean, I don't understand this. This is like your neighbor gets the upper part of the lift on Tuesdays, or, I mean, how does this actually work? Sure. Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, I would like that. That'd be good to have answered now. Sure. Perfect. Thank you.
And from the staff perspective on that note, those details would be required to be specified within the ultimately recorded CC&Rs for the project.
Okay. And because our other question...
That may vary from project to project too, because depending on the nature of the system.
Because we're basically calling these double spaces, and, you know, what is the obligation that they're maintained for, you know, 100 years, right? I mean, they're going to break eventually. And, you know, how do these things happen? Are they deeded in a way that the property has to maintain them, or someone's lost their property right to the upper one? So I will be interested in hearing from the applicant on this. And has the staff done any further thinking on parking lifts in general, or are we still just thinking them as a perfectly valid twofer?
Yeah, I think staff is still supporting the concept of parking lifts, but I'll remind the planning manager that we owe you a presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I also have an answer to your question on the affordable housing. I was able to look that up. The term for sale is 45 years, and the term for rental is 55 years.
Okay.
I had one additional question about the bikes, and I'm looking here at the poster board. There's short-term and long-term bike parking. Are both of these covered, or is the short-term parking outside for people that might want to go to the commercial space? Can you clarify that?
All the bicycle parking proposed for this project is proposed to be located inside the parking garage, combined.
So it's a hanging rack. So if I'm coming
Vertical.
to the commercial establishment out on El Camino, somehow I brought a bicycle, I'd somehow know that I could park it and where I would be able to park it. Okay, thank you.
So just to clarify, within the building, someone going to the commercial could park it within the building on these racks or some other place?
There's no outside bicycle parking proposed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Applicant, would you like to make a presentation?
My name is Moshe Dinar. I'm the applicant and the architect, and thank you very much for reviewing our project. Thank you, Stephanie, for such a great job. Work with us all along. Let me answer your question regarding the park lifts. Park lifts, you don't have to move the bottom car if your car is at the top. In other words, you don't have to go call your neighbor and say, come down, take your car out so I can move mine. These are fully automatic cars. The way it works is if you have a 2 high, you can also have a 3 high. There's 2 cars parked under each other. There's also a space big enough for a car underground. So there's a pit that is cast into the floor. So if your car is at the top, then what will happen is they'll both come down. One car will be below grade and the other one will be at grade, and it pulls out. We have been working for the past almost 10 years now with Klaus, with the biggest manufacturer of park lifts, though there are many other companies. They're all over California. There are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of park lift projects in California. In fact, our firm does primarily multi-unit housing, mixed-use buildings like this all over. We have projects in San Carlos. We've done a project in San Carlos. We have Millbrae, further up, Berkeley, and other places. All of our projects have park lifts. It is impossible to, given the size of the lots and how tight it is in urban spaces, given the fact that we have to provide more units so we can at least afford to have some affordable units, then the mechanical parking is almost a requirement. There are even more sophisticated products now where it's called, it's like a Rubik's Cube. The cars go this way and then one drops. We have a project in San Bruno where 100% of the parking for the residents is 3 high, which means that the pit is even deeper. I believe that as long as a city wants to maintain parking, some cities have tried to get rid of parking, like San Francisco, but I believe most of the cities in the peninsula still want people to be able to be comfortable and use their automobiles. And why would you spend all this money on a unit if you can't park? So obviously, the park lift is really what has enabled us to continue with the increased density that is required today in order to build within the city as opposed to expand into the suburbs and use cars and waste energy. So I would say I'm a big fan of park lifts. Now, just to tell you, I had the same comment that you made in the city of San Bruno. And we invited the entire planning commission to join us. I called the representative from Klaus, and they took us to 2 buildings in Berkeley that had both 3 high and 2 high. And they watched it operate. It is extremely safe. You have your card, like you have a card to get into an elevator. You push it in, you push the button. It knows it brings your car down. You go in, you get out, and that's it. There is no need to bother other neighbors. And they were truly convinced that it works. And as I said, we did do this very special tour, and I will offer myself to, if you'd like, if planning department needs to make a presentation and any one of you would like, I will be happy to arrange a tour to one of the buildings that Klaus has and show you how it works.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Certainly.
So young children, like how is that safety hazard resolved with these?
The pit is never really exposed. When the car is down, there is a metal plate. In fact, that's all you see. You cannot fall into the pit. There is it goes extremely slowly. It doesn't just goes, it just very slightly. There are some products that actually have some guards so that, but you'd have to open them and close them. But that can be, but the record has been very safe. To best of my, I mean, I'm not.
Yeah, understood.
I'm
No,
not
I
a
appreciate
stock.
that. No,
I'm not a stock
honestly,
owner
you
either.
know, we've had. I think we've looked. This is the 3rd project we've looked at these, and you know, I appreciate your presentation of it. That is helpful for me to understand it.
I have a building under construction in San Carlos that has a couple of them. But the best thing to do is actually to see a whole array of what's available from these companies. There's also a lot of competition.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to see these in the field. I have not bumped into these in the wild yet, so that would be useful. So what's the longevity? How does that work? 40 years from now, they conk out. It's just up to the condo board whether they want to spend 12 grand on a new one, or, you know, like how do you see that playing out by way of 8 deeded condos and these things start failing after some number of decades?
CCNRs, as well as the city, requires that the installer of the units also provide a maintenance contract. So the homeowners association is obligated to keep a maintenance contract. It's like owning an elevator. The state of California is not going to let you have an elevator without a maintenance, some sort of a. They also specify how many workers have to be cooked due to OSHA. How many workers are required every time an elevator breaks down? It's like you have to have 2. You can't just have 1 because they have to help each other. Yeah. So the same rules that apply for elevators have been developed for park lifts. They really are an elevator of sorts.
Okay. I mean, is that right? There's like the elevator certificate of inspection associated with these or something similar?
Don't quote me, but I can certainly get you the answer for that from Rick, who is the rep that we always use. There's many companies.
Yeah, and I understand, you know, they have been adopted, but, you know, we're basically being asked as a commission to consider that just as if it was 2 side-by-side concrete parking spaces that we could, you know, we know that will likely be here in 100 years, you know, but to approve a lift, you have to ask the question, what will it actually be doing in 50 years? And maybe the answer is, you know, we'll have helicopter cars or something, I don't know, but.
Yeah, they're very popular in Europe, and actually in Europe there are, what they're doing in downtown areas, rather than having a parking lot here or parking here, they're building these buildings, and there's an automated mechanism that The cars are parked all around. They pull a car and bring it down.
Okay.
Yeah, it's much more sophisticated. They are believers in this much more than we are in the United States.
Okay, well, thank you for the digression on that. I appreciate it. It's a
I
handsome...
have a question too, please.
Sure.
Is there any provision for electric car charging with these devices?
Yes, we have to provide that, and I believe it's in the plans, but it will be included also in the construction documents.
So there's one space, maybe the stationary space, that has electric car charging, or
You can have this car charging in the handicap space, which is also a single car by itself. They have now developed a car charger that works with park lifts.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about, just looking into the future, that capability be there. So
Yes,
that's
they
really
have. Don't ask me how it works, but it does exist.
Okay, thank you.
Well, again, I appreciate the digression on parking. It's a handsome design. Anything else you'd like to tell us about your project?
The only thing that, I've been working as an architect for almost 45 years. We believe that buildings should express on the facade the complexity that's what's on the inside. So if you have a lot of different types of units, and one space is a commercial, the other one is a residential, that your building says that. And then you can see we have a three-level expression of the building. It's set back. We have a background building and a forward building, which is a little bit smaller. We also have a continuous aluminum channel that goes clear across the site where we can put letters for signage so that it's not like people slapping a sign on the glass or taping it with, we have a signage plan, and the whole building, every element is designed that way. We pride ourselves on our work. Our client likes good finishes, and that's what we like to provide for San Carlos. That's it, because Stephanie did a great job. I can't improve on that.
Maybe a couple of other things just to follow up on. Guest parking. What provisions are within the plan for overnight guests if 2 or 3 units have a visitor? Where will what's the intention?
We do not have enough space to provide guest parking given the size of the lot. So there is no guest parking. I'd refer that to planning, but I would assume so, yeah.
Well, I guess my observation was that of the grade level parking, excluding the ADA slot, there are 5 that are stacked and 1 is apparently not. Is that available for a stacked lift, and could that accommodate a guest?
I don't know how stacked lifts would work for guests. Personally, we have never provided them for guests. We always provide them for the residents. We have provided stacked parking for people who work in commercial spaces. If it's a bookstore, the cashier could, be given a card or something like that. So I don't really have an answer to your question that way.
Okay, thank you. The space available for future solar on the roof, has any calculation been done to understand like how many square foot are available and kind of a typical panel size these days? How much of the guesstimated building's demand could be satisfied through the square footage of the roof available?
Thank you for asking that question. It's a very, very timely question. In January of next year, the new code, the 2019 code, right now we're still under the 2016 code. The code changes every 3 years. Energy requirements are through the roof. they have been made a lot more requirements. And one of the requirements is you don't just have to have enough space for solar collectors. You actually have to install them. So we will probably, depending upon when we get our building permit, which probably will be next year, will probably be required to provide solar collectors. And there will be, at that point, then the building code takes over, and it's the law of the land, and everybody is going to have to do it.
Yeah, that's great. And I think the addition for me is making sure that enough of the roof deck is reserved for solar versus being, let's say, maybe not designed as efficiently for the other mechanical areas. So wanting to squish all of the other mechanical as as closely together as a workman needs to work, and for safety, but to leave the rest of the roof space available for solar, so that you don't end up when you could have had 20% or 60% of the building needs, you didn't leave enough room on the roof.
Absolutely, absolutely. But things are going to change, and they're going to change progressively heavier as far as energy is concerned as the codes keep advancing.
Maybe if I could, one last, and then I'll yield to the other members. But just a curious design point. On the second floor, that open space to the south, I noticed from the drawings that there's an open courtyard, and it abuts everyone's bedroom. And that just seemed a little awkward.
Well,
and so is that true? Did I read that right? And if so, maybe, like, what's the rationale of having an open courtyard that is, out of my bedroom and into somebody else's bedroom, and just seems...
there's 2 units that front onto that. I'm sorry. There's 2 units that front onto that court. There is a divider between them, a landscape divider. So that
on the second floor, is that correct?
Second floor.
The second floor, where you've got the below market rate unit, the 1 bedroom, and then you've got the other 2 units on either side.
Right. They share that, because if we only had 2 units, then we wouldn't need that open space. But because we need to get 3 units, we only have visibility from the front and the back. So we had to create a central court. So yes, you're correct. The 1-bedroom unit and the other 2 units, the bedrooms face onto that. But we have that design in other buildings, and it's okay, because there are privacy elements that are incorporated to provide that. But that is only the 1 bedroom, because if you notice, all the units in this building, or most of them, have plenty of not only public open space, but private open space. Balconies to the front, balconies to the rear, open space on the 4th floor, open space on the 2nd floor, and open space on the roof, which the owner wanted to include as an amenity for the people who live there.
Did I read it? Maybe I'm just misinterpreting the plan. That courtyard, are there like sliding doors from each of the units onto that courtyard?
Yes.
So residents of all 3 of those units could walk out their sliding doors and be out in that space.
Yes, but we provide landscape barriers so that each one could have its own private, but still get all the natural light that comes in there.
Okay, that wasn't, my eye didn't catch that in looking at the plan, so thank you.
Correct. It's not, but that's what we have done. In fact, with this owner, we did another building exactly like that, and we ended up with some very nice visual barriers, so that each unit had each bedrooms, so to speak, had a portion of it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
I would just invite you to double check my math, but I think I'm right here. So the affordable unit you're proposing is the one bedroom at 804 square feet. Your plan on A1.1 is saying 804 for the 2 one-bedroom units. And anyway, I added up the other housing units, and altogether they're 10,236 square feet according to your plans. And that, just FYI, comes out to 7.85% square footage dedicated to affordable housing. Yeah, I mean, it's just a factual observation. I just wanted to share that.
Planning departments create in terms of how this works. We understand it as 15% of the total number of units. The actual division between units has to do also with income level, and it has to do with other considerations. It also has to do with the paying of additional fees. So that is a slightly more complex situation. For an 8-unit building, when one unit is a total loss, I fully appreciate your concern, but it's also something that needs to be said, at least for the property owners, is that we are putting in close to 15%, 15 to 20%, 25% even in many cities, affordable units. And the units sell for not even the amount, about half the construction cost. So it's
well, this is a moderate affordable unit. It's not low affordable. But
that's why, yeah, it is a moderate, and it does meet, I think, the requirements. But you're correct. In terms of square footage, you're very correct.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm sure that was well studied in the plan. Okay. Any other questions of staff for the applicant? This is a public hearing. Did anyone want to speak on this matter? I don't think we have a card from you, though. Okay, well, we will need you to fill out a card, so can you pick one up? You can come forward and speak, but we do need you to fill it out. Okay.
Been to one of these meetings. So my name is Jim Pilch. I've been a resident here in San Carlos for the last 25 years. Owned the property on Greenwood Avenue. We originally moved in there, bought the property in 1997, and been there ever since, within a stone's throw of this project. A bit conflicted because I'm actually good friends and didn't know that till I showed up tonight with the owners of this. Having said that, you know, one of the bigger issues.
And I'm sorry, you're a commercial space, or you live nearby?
Space. So I'm on Greenwood Avenue. So I'm a business owner and a resident.
The Rack Spot, is that your business?
No,
I'm sorry.
I'm right next to Avant-Garde. You wouldn't know me if you had tried to find me.
Okay.
I hide.
I'm just trying to size
I'm a CPA.
So it's a commercial space. Got it.
I'm a tax guy.
Okay.
So keep a low profile, not looking for any clients. I haven't been for a long time. So even my own clients sometimes go, I didn't even know you were there. But so one thing that really puzzled me was I never heard about this project until I got the letter about a week ago, stating that they were doing this project, that the plans would be available, I guess it was the 18th. I finally went and looked and went, holy smokes, I can't believe they're building something this big that nearby. I mean, I'm literally a stone's throw away. You stand in my parking lot, I'm probably less than 100 feet away from the back of this. They say 4 stories. You know, when I look at it, and, you know, you can see, obviously, by the time you get all the extra stuff on top, realistically, probably closer to 5 stories. And there's nothing in that area that's anywhere near that tall. With the spaces, and I'm having a hard time understanding how with 17 bedrooms and 8 condo units and a commercial space, you only need 11 parking spaces. I guess that's up to the city. But let's be very honest. There's going to be a lot of cars that aren't going to be in the garage. And the question is, where are they going to go? And I can tell you where they're going to go because that's the street I'm on. You know, we get it all night. You know, we get all the apartment complexes nearby. There's overflow from them. They park on both sides of Greenwood. Makes it an extreme hazard, in all honesty, because you can only get one car down that street when they're parked on both sides. So I'm very concerned, you know, with the traffic, all the additional parking requirements, and just having this humongous building, unless the plan is to make the whole street that way, because this is going to stick out like a sore thumb. I mean, you look at, there was one where they had the scale and you saw the building next to it. It looks tiny, and that's a 2-story building.
Our current zoning does allow for 4-story pretty much up and down El Camino. Not everyone knows that.
And is it just El Camino, or is it the adjoining areas as well?
You'd have to look at the plan. It's varied, but El Camino specifically is considered transit-oriented, and our, as far as I understand, our code is always allowed for tall buildings, 4 stories or so. I'm no expert on it, but, you know, I think there will be more unless, as a community, we wanted to revisit our zoning in that area.
Just again, it's going to create an additional traffic problem. I mean, I can't tell you how many nights I walk out of my office and my driveway's blocked because somebody either didn't see it, didn't care, parked, was in a hurry. I mean, I've called the police, especially in the last 2 years. I probably called the police 24 times because I physically can't get out of my driveway. And this is just going to make things worse. I mean, I looked at this and I'm like, holy smokes, I can't believe this is what the city's going to. But if it is, I want to remain friends with him because I'm going to sell him my building at some point down the road and let him add on to it. So,
okay.
But yeah, I'd like you guys to really take that into consideration in this project.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Can I say one word? Sure.
El Camino Real is the biggest boulevard in Northern California. It goes through God knows how many communities. It is the best location for public transportation. It has a train station in San Carlos. It has bus service. It has wide, ample lanes. If there's one place where you can put a 4-story building, it's El Camino Real. You can't do that up in the hills where it's single-family homes. You can't do that in the industrial area where, you know, the soil is polluted. But you can do it on El Camino. And El Camino has been determined as a boulevard. There is a boulevard concept that exists for El Camino Real that specifies planting, trees, tree grades, sidewalk dimensions, and it actually recommends that we have a little bit more density. Now, the building next to our building is 2 stories. We are 4, but I don't see that is too jarring. Most cities have at least that much difference. We're not building really high rises here of any type, like in San Francisco, Oakland, you know, places like that. But we are saying that, in fact, in my opinion, El Camino Real is too low density for what it is and what it should be. It should house more people. It should provide for more businesses. And these housing and these businesses should use more public transportation, especially when we have such a beautiful station right here in San Carlos. That was it. Thank you.
If I could, Stephanie, maybe a follow-up for you. In the working with the team, was it discussed whether to put a parking space out back in what this is now called the landscape area? And I see that there are varieties of fire protection and a variety of other meters, but maybe there is an alternative for where they would sit in the building to create, again, a guest or yet another parking space because they're at just such a premium.
To answer your question, no, there had been no discussion about adding an exterior surface parking space. To add on to the point of parking, the municipal code has specifications for the amount of parking required for residential units. There are no guest parking spaces required for a building with only 8 units. That trigger does not kick in until the project has 10 units or more. And then related to that, there's also an exemption for any parking for a commercial space in this zoning district that is less than 1,500 square feet. The commercial area proposed is at 1,450 square feet.
Thank you.
If there's no further public comment, I'll entertain a motion to close public comment.
I move we close public comment.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye. Yes.
Any nays? Public comment is closed. Commissioners?
Well, I agree that the higher density 4-story type housing along El Camino is part of the master plan, and it's compatible with the way we envision that street growing. We put quite a bit of effort into making sure that the minimal parking is there and functional for the long term. And that's about the limits of what we can do. For similar developments, we've heard the perspective that less parking would be desirable because you want to encourage people to use public transport. So I think in my opinion, we're falling in a middle zone of decent amount of parking, and also acknowledging the access to public transportation, and that many of the people may not actually need to use a car if they live there.
And to build on that parking discussion, I think I read in the packet that if we went back to a 20-foot wide driveway, we would lose 1 parking space. So going with the waiver and granting a 16-foot width driveway gives us 1 more space. So I see those 2 issues as being linked.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that particular waiver, although I agree the 10% threshold math didn't quite work out for me. But
this will be beyond this particular project, but I just would like to make the point that as we as a commission and with the city council look at below market rate housing, it will need to be mindful of how the developments encourage 1-bedroom below market rate versus 2-bedroom, or occasionally 3, because we're trying to encourage families, not just couples. And I think, a couple with a young child or 2 young children might be the folks that we're looking to attract and make San Carlos affordable. And my concern would be the way we've set up our zoning code. We might be encouraging developers to reach a conclusion as we have here. I understand why they've done that, and I think we need to be very careful of how this plays out. And I don't know, Lisa, maybe is there a perspective from the city as to how are we encouraging a range of market rate units with a range of bedrooms rather than 1?
Sure, thank you. Our larger developments where there's multiple units being proposed, such as the Transit Village Trestle development, we are able to get more of a mix of the larger units with more bedrooms. For the smaller developments, it's very difficult to do so. What we brought forward with you previously was kind of a quick fix on the BMR ordinance, and that was relating to the rental and the ownership. But what we're going to do very shortly is put out an RFP and have a more detailed analysis of our existing affordable housing ordinance. paired with an economic study to make sure we find that sweet spot so that we're not disincentivizing any development. We do need some market rate housing as well, but we find what that right ratio is of affordable units and market rate units. And then also looking at the city's density bonus provisions as well as the state's density bonus provisions. And is there any changes we want to make to help incentivize those? So we'll be releasing that RFP shortly, getting going on that study. It shouldn't take too long, and then bringing forward some suggested revisions to Planning Commission and City Council. And that'll be separate from a longer, more in-depth study we do on kind of housing overall in the community. And that's leading up to the next housing element cycle, where we're going to be looking at kind of all of our development regulations and seeing, are there issues that is not incentivizing more housing development? Maybe trying to get some smaller units, and looking at the open space and the parking ratios, and then also looking at, where we want to see housing in the future, because we anticipate the new state regulations is going to be much higher for our housing production in the next housing element cycle.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad we're going to take a deeper dive look at this, and there's a lot of angles I probably don't even understand on it yet, but this one's pretty clear, and I just think we're going to see a lot more 6-unit, 8-unit, 10-unit type projects than we'll ever see another transit village, pretty obviously. So just my observation, and this is a perfect case study, that basing affordable housing on 15% of the number of units is just a flawed way to go about it. I mean, I think as a community, we decided we wanted to see 15% affordable units, and that's the intent of the community. And by not basing it on square footage, the system can clearly be gamed, and here we have 7.85% affordable instead of the 15%. I just don't think that meets the spirit of what our community has tried to do in this area, so that disappoints me.
I think the way most cities look at it is 15% and the number of units, not the square footage of the units.
Well, that's right. That's what we've done here, and that's how they're only dedicating 7.85% of square footage to affordable, because they just put a tiny unit in and call it affordable, which begs the question, so we only want affordable units with 1 bedroom. I mean, that's what our current policy will strongly incentivize. That's clear.
Especially in these smaller lots, and with, we just heard the calculus earlier that if you're under 1,500 square foot, you don't need parking for any employees in the retail. Therefore, there's understanding the code and how to work with it and how to manage around it is something that folks do. So understand it, it's okay, and we should be thoughtful on how we set up that code, particularly for below market rate housing, if we can influence it.
Well, and I mean, more to the point, when an applicant comes looking for a variance of some kind, it's in our purview to ask something back from the applicant, and that's where they're asking for something. And here they are asking for things, and they're half of the spirit of our code as far as affordable housing. So we don't have Greg Rubens in the room, but I would like to know, I'm not of a mind to approve these variances that are before us unless this affordable unit becomes a 2-bedroom unit instead of a 1-bedroom unit. Because I think the 2-bedroom unit, I'll just do the math. I don't know. What do the other commissioners have a perspective on that?
Well, I agree. We need to do this in the future. I don't know that we can do it at 9 o'clock tonight on this particular project.
Are you suggesting a continuance?
No, I'm ready to vote for it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm there yet.
But from my perspective, and I kind of raised some points earlier, I think that we have a systemic question. I think that the applicants have lived within the very clear intent of the way the regulation is written. I wouldn't want to prejudice against what they've done, and I think part of our conversation with City Council is how do we as a city address this, and how do we do it holistically? So I absolutely respect your point. I'm of a like mind, and personally, I don't want to take it out on the applicants here tonight. I think we have a bigger issue.
And I appreciate that perspective, but staff, can we get a rundown again on exactly what we're being asked to approve here?
There are 4 entitlements that you're being requested to approve. 1, design review, so the architecture, the landscaping, the parking of the building. 2nd is the tentative map that would allow for those units within that building to be subdivided into condominium units, for sale units, both the residential units as well as the commercial units.
And that's just any condo plan needs to be approved, basically. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because it's right now it's one property code, and so we're asking to split the 1 PIN number into 8 PIN numbers. That's the essence of this.
9.
9,
Yes.
correct. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Assessor parcel numbers. Yes.
Yeah.
The 3rd component is the required below market rate housing plan that is associated with this development. And then lastly is the waiver request, again, also tying back into entitlement number 1 because it is part of the design of the building.
And what is being waived? That's the width of the driveway?
Driveway width.
Okay. And can you review the findings we're being asked to make on number 3?
There are no specific findings. It's found to be in compliance with the below market rate housing ordinance, which in staff's opinion, in consultation with the city's below market rate housing manager, the proposed below market rate plan of a 1-bedroom unit affordable to a moderate income household has been found to comply with the city's municipal code.
Has been recommended. We're the ones who find that, correct?
Recommended.
Yeah.
Or found to be, so the recommendation is to approve it.
It's our role to find that, though, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Evaluated is a better term, I should say, staff evaluation.
Got it.
But to be clear, the way the zoning code is written with respect to the below market rate housing, it's a percentage of the units, not a square footage based calculation.
Correct. That's the way that the current BMR ordinance reads.
Do the math independently, and I would say they are falling within the current rule. So I guess I'm sort of endorsing what Commissioner Iacopone was saying, that we all agree maybe there should be fine tuning of the below market housing rules, but this one seems to me to fall within the rule, and I don't see an overall situation where there's horse trading to be had, that where we could ask for additional leverage here. You know, it is in effect it's desirable to have that, but on one hand, on the other hand, it's a burden on the property owner, and so it's not something to be taken on a one-off basis. I think a consistent approach is.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, and I realize the burden on the applicant. It's helpful to review exactly what we're being asked to approve here, and there are not any great variances here, so I appreciate that.
I would associate myself with your comments as well. I think there's a bigger issue here, and it seems that the applicant is in compliance with the current code, and I don't think so I would support what is being proposed.
Sorry, Don, did you?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in listening to our conversation, some of the questions, some of the answers, the notion that, and maybe this will happen by default, so Lisa, you can comment, but this idea of the 2020 solar or energy regulations, and therefore making sure that we're, when this is granted, it focuses on future regs and not current regs. Can we make that a condition of approval?
You're referring to the building code?
The building code, yeah.
Yeah, so the building code in effect at the time the building permit is issued is the building code the project would rely upon.
And
is not the building code in effect today.
And thank you. And is there a chance that a building permit will be issued between now and the end of the year?
I don't expect the applicant to get through that quickly.
Okay, thank you for that. And the second is, I think Commissioner Roof brought up this notion of car charging in the lift units. And that also strikes as something to ask for as part of the, as a condition.
Just a clarification, do you want to be each stacker shall be car charge ready, or each stacker shall be provided with electrical vehicle charging station?
My vote would be for the latter, that they are ready for electric vehicles when the building is complete, so that it doesn't have to wait for some future time.
It's through the chair. You've closed the public hearing, so I don't know if you'd like to hear from the applicant on that item.
Sure.
Commission, the number of electric charging stations in a specific lot or parking area is determined by the code. So whatever is required by the code, that is what we provide. So if they say for so many parking spaces, we have 13 parking spaces, you need 1 or you need 2 or you need 3. That's what you provide. Same as handicap spaces. If you have 0 to 25, 1, 25 to 50, 2, and it keeps going like that. So there are very specific rules. If in our case we don't have a single car space, then we need to put it in a park lift. So, but doing all of them is usually not what the code requires, at least at this point. In time, probably more. That's all I wanted to clarify.
Is that what our code provides? Like 1 is required for up to 25 units?
It's a building code requirement, and I don't have the details of that, but that sounds about right. And so what I understand.
Oh, handicap, okay. Is there any requirement for electrified?
I believe it said it needs to be electric ready. I don't know what the new code says. During this meeting, I emailed the building official to give us a summary of the new code requirements. But I think what the commission is asking for is a step above the building code, and to at least make sure that the vehicle lift system that's acquired is car charge ready, so that if any time in the future somebody wants to adapt it, it's very easy to do so, if I heard the commission correctly.
I didn't realize this, but maybe someone knows the answer. A couple of weeks ago, I was down in Southern California with my high school friend who owns a Tesla, and we spent hours trying to find a Tesla charger in Southern California. I couldn't believe it. But apparently, if you have a Tesla, you need a Tesla charger versus others. I didn't know that.
I believe Teslas will take you to the nearest charger, actually, but they will.
Well, as far as the readiness versus installation, I don't see much of an opportunity that I could support to require more charging stations. I was very encouraged to hear that the lift technology would allow that in the future, and that could be kind of a demand-driven opportunity, but at least the barrier to getting that installed is going to be a little bit lower if the technology adapts it. I'm kind of happy that we raise it. I mean, I raised the electric car charging question for all these developments, and I'm hoping that the concern gets back to the people who design and install these, that they understand that there's an interest and a need here.
Well, I definitely agree with your concern. In fact, as I recall, the last project, just like this one before us, I think they left with plans to install or have it electric ready in their one ADA spot, because that was their only spot without a lift, just like this project. So even if it is a requirement, I mean, that's also an unworkable public policy that only, in these type of projects, we're going to end up with all the ADA spots with electrical. And I mean,
I don't understand
can't
how
be the intent.
that works either, actually. I mean, who gets to park there? A handicap permitted vehicle or an electric car charging? I don't know how that.
It would be ADA. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to park my electric car in a handicap spot.
Yeah.
So Lisa, you asked a question, so let me ask back. Is it within our purview this evening, as part of a condition of approval, for us to require that when built, the lift system is EV adaptable, ready to be adapted, or adaptable at that time it's put in with the equipment, although it may not be ready for electric charging? You used the right phrase. I don't know. Maybe you could play it back.
Well, you're asking me to act as the city attorney. I do think that's a reasonable condition, though, to require that be EV adaptable, and so that any tenant or resident in the future could easily install that. And I heard the commission has quite a few concerns about this stacking system, and so that may alleviate some of those concerns, as well as kind of address the waiver request as well.
I'd like to propose that.
So that would be all of the lift spaces are electric ready so that they can be installed if the future owner desires to. And I think that does square nicely with the waiver we're being asked for here as well.
And when and if we have our tour of a similar system, it would be nice if we could see some that are EV ready or EV, that have had the readiness installed. In my mind, I can't figure out how a hardwired charge goes in when parking spaces are moving around. It's not hardwired.
It's a loose wire in some sort of a plastic casing, and it just travels up with the lift as it goes up and down.
Okay,
so
thank you.
It's like you're plugging in your toaster in the wall, something like.
I see.
I'm not,
okay.
But I believe these things exist. I don't know if it's unusual to see all the cars be electric ready at this phase of our time, but I believe the number of electric vehicles, electric stations that we are providing now in housing is increasing every year. So if you look at cities like Berkeley, and they've gone higher, so it is available. I don't know how. I just don't know enough, but we can certainly take the condition of approval and do the best that we can with it.
Given some of the uncertainties with the technology, you could add at the discretion of the director at the end of that, if there's any concerns. I mean, I have spoken with a different lift provider, and they said, yes, we can make all the spaces EV ready and EV able. So I didn't speak with is it Klaus that you're using? Klaus, yeah. But I believe that technology is available.
I mean, if the technology is available, then it doesn't do much for us to make it a condition of approval that the technology be available. We're sort of going in circles on that, but.
No, I think that we can make the condition to require it, but with the director's discretion. I think for something harder like that, I think that's wise.
To require what?
Require that the lifts be EV ready, I guess would be the term.
Because the alternative would be to buy and install lifts that weren't EV ready.
Yeah, they couldn't be converted.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
and then we would end up with 8 spaces that we know will never be EV ever.
Yeah, that's my concern. That's what I want to avoid. I'm somewhat reassured that the technology is available, so that wouldn't happen. But I wouldn't oppose a condition clearly stating that. I mean, it shows what the intention is and what the thinking is of the city regarding this. So I would support it. EV ready, so there's not going to be a plug there. It's just going to be that you have to be able to install one in the future.
The future owner could spend $1,000 instead of $15,000 to allow electric car in their spot.
That's right. You don't have to buy a new lift. Yeah. So I would support that condition of EV ready requirement.
I would support that as well.
I'm ready to support the overall package. Yeah, can't make a motion unless you can read it. I can read this one. I move that the Planning Commission grant approval for design review tentative map below market rate BMR housing plan and waiver to allow the construction of 1 new 4-story mixed-use building with 8 residential units and 1 commercial unit at 1240 El Camino Real, APN 051-336-140, for the reasons incorporated in the staff report and with the conditions in the code compliance certificate and tentative map certificate, with the addition of the conditional statement regarding EV readiness of the lift mechanism parking spots. Did I get that right?
With director discretion.
Who's the director?
The director's Al Savé.
The director what?
The director is Al Savé.
Oh, I see. That director. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine for me.
I'll second the motion with the amendments.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
Vice Chair Capone?
Yes.
Chair Dugan?
I'm going to vote no on this. This is just a very strong case study on how our current affordable housing calculation can be gamed. This plan disappoints me in that way. I think the intent of the community is quite clear for 15% affordable housing. This plan yields 7.8% of the square feet for affordable housing, so roughly half of the stated intent. So maybe that might be something the city needs to take up, but I take a dim view of that, someone cutting that in half. I just don't think meets the spirit of our affordable housing objectives as a city, and I think it doesn't recognize the housing crisis that our community is in. So I vote no for those reasons. I think that did pass the measure, though. So it's a handsome building. Good luck with your construction.
Good luck.
So we can move on to reports, correspondence, and general information.
Thank you. So one announcement I have is that there's a joint effort between the city and Home for All entitled Welcome Home San Carlos. This is aimed at helping our community talk more constructively about the shared challenge of housing. Next month, we're going to be launching a series of engagements to talk to our community about hopes for the future, focusing specifically on housing and identifying key priorities. The first community meeting is scheduled for Thursday, November 7th at Heller Museum. The program starts at 7 p.m. Light refreshments and childcare will be provided. We'd like to encourage people to attend and RSVP online, especially if childcare or translation services are needed. And then updates for your next Planning Commission meeting. Reminder that you have a special meeting on Wednesday, and that starts at 6 p.m. I do believe we're going to have refreshments for you, given the early start time, so you don't have to have a big dinner.
You are calling it a retreat, so, you know.
Sounds good. Well, you're not meeting in this room.
Yeah.
5 o'clock?
6 o'clock.
We're not going to Pebble Beach, I'll put it
Sorry
that
about
way.
that. Yeah, so the meeting's at 6 o'clock. I believe it's upstairs in that second floor conference room. We like to call it the Enterprise Room. It looks like we're going to be canceling your November 4th meeting. We just don't have any items ready for the agenda. And then we're trying to dedicate your November 18th meeting to the accessory dwelling unit ordinance. Those are all the updates I have.
One question, the Home for All November 7th community meeting, where do we go to sign up or RSVP for that? Is that on the city's website?
It is on the city's website, yes.
Thank you.
Lisa, did you just confirm the cancellation of the 4th, or is this a heads up and look for future communication?
Yeah, there is a sign that I'd like to confirm in the morning. It's possible, though, that it'll be canceled.
Okay.
I can confirm tomorrow.
We'll hold. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll hold.
Great. You know, I think 1240 El Camino was a perfect project before us going into our mini retreat. And I will again encourage all of us, and in fact, I'll ask you, Lisa, if you can please send around the link to everyone you think will be in the meeting to our mayor's State of the City address from January. It's available on YouTube. It's really easy to find. Just type in 2019 San Carlos State of the City, and it'll come right up. And Mark did a great job of just highlighting the land use in San Carlos and how we need to be pretty thoughtful as we move forward with this surge of potential investment, and particularly calling out the fact that we have many people in our towns, you know, we're in this period with a lot of tension, right? Because we have a housing crisis. We're all focused on that. I wonder where my kids will be able to live someday. And then on the other side, yeah, no one wants the character of this great city to change. So there's that tension. But what we have right now is a zoning code. And so we should all be a little concerned when citizens routinely show up and express surprise 4-story buildings can be built on El Camino. In fact, the entire stretch of El Camino someday soon likely will be 4-story buildings, and none of us should be surprised by that. And what Mayor Olberg does a nice job of explaining is, as a community, we need to decide, is that what we want? Is it not what we want? Frankly, I'm pretty neutral on the subject because I see both sides of this tension pretty clearly. But in any event, I think it's a call to be deliberate about it. And I think his State of the City address really did a nice job of addressing that. And I think watching that before we go into our mini treat will be very helpful.
And I watched it. You had, so I wanted to thank the chair. You mentioned this 2 weeks ago, and I went on YouTube and I watched it, and it was a really great address, and I learned all of the things you just talked about. And so thank you. Thanks for the friendly nudge.
Terrific. Yeah, I think you'll all appreciate it if you watch it. Mark did a nice job with that. And it's certainly, I would say of his, I think 45-minute talk, I think 35 minutes of it was right in the wheelhouse of the Planning Commission. So, yeah. Okay, great. Anything else? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.